Hey, nice to see you.
Hey Megan, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Your film is phenomenal. It's so much fun. So I
Oh,
wanted to
thank
get
you.
started with when before diving into this process, what was it about the Toxic Avenger and the story that resonated with you that you were like, I need to remake this?
It's funny you should say it. It never occurred to me I need to remake it. Never crossed my mind. But I saw the movie when I was in about sixth grade, and it was really inspirational and impactful at the time. I mean, beyond the fact that it was just hilarious and wild to watch, which it was. But this was right around the time when my buddies and I had gotten a VHS camera and we were starting to figure out how to make our own movies. And this was the first time that I could think of watching a movie where it really felt kind of homemade. Like it was not a big studio movie. It seemed like it was just friends that made a movie with their buddies and they kind of did the makeup themselves. And that was really, really inspirational. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was independent filmmaking. It was the first time I was exposed to that. And we really that was really influential on us as we started figuring out how to make our own movies. Never thought about redoing it, but many years later, when Legendary they were asking a bunch of writers to submit pitches to write the screenplay of a remake, and I kind of thought that if we were to do it, it would be fun to kind of take it back to those types of movies that we were making in seventh grade, but with a big, studio behind it. And then that turned into a directing job, and it kind of went from there. But it was all about sort of recapturing that spirit of what we felt like when we were watching it as 13-year-olds.
Yeah, I was just about to ask because it does have that very homemade feel because you do feel like hey, I could make this movie as well, but it's also, I mean, obviously you're using high level cast, high big VFX budget. So when at the heart of this story is the father-son dynamic between Peter Dinklage and Jacob Tremblay's characters.
Uh-huh.
So what was it? What were you kind of looking for in those characters, or like recasting these roles, and then what did they bring to these roles that wasn't necessarily on the page?
Yeah, it was really the idea was wanting to kind of have the movie have the same tone as the original, but not do the exact story beats. And so instead of having him be trying to get a girlfriend like it was in the original, it was his emotional issue was going to be about him relating to his kid, his foster kid. And so that was sort of the idea. And on the page, it made sense, but it was also surrounded by a lot of completely insane stuff. He's falling into toxic waste and getting muscles, and it's a lot of cartoonish stuff around the periphery. But what was so exciting was when we got an actor like Peter and we got an actor like Jacob, they played the roles so straight, so like it was not in a comedy movie, that there was not all this sloppy, goopy, toxic waste stuff going on around them. They played it really dramatic, and I, to me, that sort of made it so that all the craziness that was going on in the periphery, it didn't get bogged down with just being too silly. It gave it like an emotional heart to it that you could then be as ridiculous as you wanted around the edges, and I don't think it would have worked without them having done that. So I was very grateful for that aspect of it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's actually honestly very heartwarming near the end. But so the Toxic Avenger, his you go with practical effects, which are very highly detailed. You obviously have Peter's character, you have then there's a couple I don't want to spoil near the end, but then there's also Elijah Wood who's in the heavy prosthetics. So what
Yeah.
was that sort of process in designing? How many different variations did you go through, and what was that sort of like? How long did it sort of take some of those characters to be realized?
Elijah's was the application, I want to say, was maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. They would get faster as they went along, but the design for that, we did like one or two versions and we settled on it very quickly. I was really after like a kind of Rocky Horror Picture Show, Danny DeVito as the Penguin.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
the early design sketch that we did from the artist is almost identical to what the makeup looks like. So that one was very quick. The makeup for Toxie, we did many different design versions of, and some of them were very monstrous, very zombie-like, with like lots of melting flesh and exposed, like just very gross. And we ended up going back to a version that was a little more approachable, where we kind of took some ideas from how he looked in the cartoon and the comic book, and a little bit from the original movie, um, and then we took some of Peter's facial features and incorporated that into the makeup. And we just wanted to make sure that we got that one right. And we eventually went with that look because we felt like it would have a classic monster look, but would also have a kind of humanity where people could kind of be friends with him and not, instead of being scared of him. So that's what we went with. And that one, that was a face with multiple pieces. There were motors here, arms, legs. That was about 3 hours, maybe more than that at the beginning. And they probably got it down to like 2.5 by the end of the show. But that was pretty involved.
Yeah, no, it's incredible, incredible. He's actually friendlier looking than some of the human characters,
True.
but I do wanted to add, because it does sort of leave the door open based on the ending. Have you had any thoughts about where a follow-up could go, or is that something, or is this like sort of you want to leave it some similar to the first film where it has its own, it generates its own legacy? Because there's a lot of buzz, people wanting to see this film for a long time.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've definitely thought about some ideas about where it could go. There have been no conversations about that. Like I don't know if there's any plans for that right now, or if there's or anything like that. But if somebody were to ask me, I have some ideas that we talked about when we were filming. But who knows?
No, I mean, I'd be looking forward to seeing it. And then I don't want to keep you too long, but there was, I know you had some trouble finding distribution initially, but now that the film's finally coming, were there any, like looking back, were there any particular sequences that were too gnarly for your film? Because sometimes it feels like you could have gone further, or was there something that you had to cut, or something that, in hindsight, that you got away with that you're happy with?
No, there was no, to my knowledge, there was no hang up on the movie getting distributed because things were too gnarly. I don't, it's not that gnarly. It's
Yeah.
like, the worst episode of Game of Thrones is more hardcore than this. I always treated it as a comedy that's got a little bit of blood in it, but it's not meant to be a total gross out. I think I wonder if because Terrifier is with Cineverse that people might have thought that like this was going to be on the same level. It's totally not. It's meant to be a little more of a comedy than that, but I suspect that it had a hard time finding distribution because not of gore or violence, but because of tone. Like I think it was just sort of like different than what people usually think of, and they had a hard time of thinking about how to sort of market it as being crowd pleasing. And I think Cineverse saw it, and I think they recognized it as actually being crowd pleasing and could market it that way. And that's why they were such a great partner to sort of get with on the movie. But no, there wasn't anything like, oh, we can't release this because it's too gnarly. It's certainly not. You can just look at it and be like, nah, dude, it's a regular old R movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm so glad people are finally gonna be able to see it. But thank you so much for your time, Macon. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. It was nice talking to you.